Okay, good day everyone. Today I am going to discuss the component 1. So this component focuses on how students learn a language. It also presents 6 important principles that can guide teacher in teaching language effectively. So karon I will discuss the 6 principles one by one and give some simple examples para mas dali nato sila masabtan. Okay, so let's proceed to the component 1. So first, what is component 1? So component 1 is called the language learning process. It explains how language learning takes place and how students acquire and learn a language. It provides principles that teacher can follow them, planning and conducting language lessons. So it reminds us that language learning is not only about memorizing grammar, vocabulary, or roots. Students also need to practice, communicate, think, and use the language in meaningful situations. So in simple words, component 1 is about how students learn in language. So now let's proceed to the 6 language teaching principle. So component 1 has 6 language teaching principles. First is the spiral progression, second is the interaction, third is integration, fourth is learner-centeredness, fifth is contextualization, and lastly, constructions. So these 6 principles have different meanings, but they all work together to make language learning more effective. So let's proceed to the first principle, the spiral progression. So spiral progression means that language skills and structures are taught repeatedly. However, as students move to higher level, the lessons become more difficult and more advanced. For example, students may first learn simple sentences. Later, they use those skills to write paragraph, essays, and more complex text. So, students don't just learn something once and move on. They review what they already learned and develop it further. In simple words, learning moves from simple to complex. So, basically, balik-balikan ang previous learning pero mas challenging na siya as a student's progress. Muna siya ang idea sa spiral progression. So, now let's proceed to the interaction, or the second principle is the interaction. So, interaction means that language learnings happen through communication. Student needs opportunities to use the language and communicate with other people. For example, teacher can use pair conversation, group discussion, interviews, role playing, and presentation. Through these activities, students are not only listening to the teacher, they are actually using the language themselves. So this is important because students cannot become good language user if they only study the language but do not practice using it. So the main idea is students learn language by using language. So dili enough nga mag-memorize lang ta. We also need to use the language and interact with other people para ma-develop gyud ang atong communication skills. So let's proceed to the third principle. So integration means that different language skills should be connected and taught together. So this includes listening, speaking, reading, writing, viewing, grammar, and vocabulary. For example, the teacher can give students a story to read. After reading, they can discuss the story with other classmates. Then, they can learn new vocabulary, identify grammar and structures, and write their own response. So, in just one activity, students are already practicing several language skills. So, instead of teaching every skill separately, we connect them because they are related to each other. So, in simple terms, language skills should work together. Kay in real communication, kay in real life communication, dili man pud nga reading ra atong gamiton. Usually, we listen, speak, read, and write together. So let's proceed to the fourth principle, the learner-centeredness. So this means that teaching should consider the student's needs, abilities, interests, and individual differences. We know that students are not the same. Some students learn quickly while others need more time to practice. Some students are comfortable speaking while others are better at writing or reading. Because of these differences, teachers should choose activities and strategies that are appropriate for their learners. So, the focus is not only on what the teacher wants to teach, but also on what the learners need. Kay dili man gud pare-pareho ang tanan students as future teachers, kinahanglan nato i-consider ilang needs and abilities. So let's proceed to the fifth principles, the contextualization. So contextualization means that language should be taught through meaningful and realistic situation. So students should understand how the language they can how language they learn can be used in real life. Lesson can be connected to the experiences. Okay, so let's proceed to the last principle, the construction. So when we say construction, it is when students actively build their own knowledge and understanding. They learn by thinking, discovering, reflecting, and participating in activities, while the teacher guides and supports them. So to conclude, component 1, language learning process explain how language learning should take place. It is guided by 6 principles, which are the spiral progression, interaction, integration, learner-centeredness, contextualization, and constructions. So these 6 principles shows that language learning should be progressive, interactive, connected, learner-focused, meaningful, and active. As future English teachers, understanding these principles is important because they can guide us in planning lesson and choosing appropriate teaching strategies for our students. So the main thing that we should remember is component 1 tell us how students learn language, while the 6 principles guide teacher on how to support that learning. So that would be all for my discussion on component 1. The other components will be discussed by my other group members who will explain their assigned components in more detail. Thank you everyone for listening, and I hope you learned something from my presentation.